Well, hello, coaches. Welcome back. Coach KW here. I hope you're all well. It is the middle of preseason for me at this time of year, but more importantly, YouTube told me today this is my 1 year anniversary on this channel, so we are 1 years old. And to celebrate, I hope that you will give me a like, a subscribe, and maybe even hit the bell. And certainly, lots of sharing has been happening. The viewer count and the subscriber count has gone up greatly in the past month and a half, and that's fantastic. I hope that we're finally on a roll. To be honest with you, for the about 6 months in, I was debating stopping because it just felt like I was yelling into the wind. But it is nice to know that I am helping coaches and I'm getting some great feedback. So if you could continue to help me out, because about 2/3 of you who watch me are not subscribers, it's free. Please do me a solid, help me out if I'm helped you in any way. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite of the video from 2 videos ago, which was on playing out of the back in 9v9. Because almost as soon as that video was out, the next comments I started to get online from folks in different channels was, oh, well, how would you press against a team like that? It's a fair and valid question, because the playing out of the back video showed you all the different ways that makes it hard to press a team like that. But it's not impossible. And so we're going to go look at those functions of pressing, because I think it's really important to have a structured press. If you never watched my videos in the past on the 7v7, I have a whole video on pressing in 7v7, and all of the concepts that are in that video, much simplified because there's less space, less players, and even having to come back to the restraining line or the halfway line, all apply to pressing at 9v9 and 11v11. The idea of a press, whether it's a press on a restart or a counter press, is to cut the field into a manageable size, reduce the number of options the player on the ball has, and eventually make that, a lot of times you hear, play predictable. Make it so that the player on the ball only has a few options. It's easy to read and understand which of those options are they going to be played and react. Now, one of the beauties of our game is that creativity is one of the tenets of the principles of play. And you're always going to be shocked by a player doing something new, innovative, creative, and that's fantastic. That's part of the game. That's what we love, and that's why we love this game. But if 80% of the time you know where the ball more than likely is going to go, it really is a huge advantage to you when you're in that pressing situation to then react to it and to train your players to react to it. So we're going to take a look at some of the ways that I would look at it in 9v9, which again is universal. We'll talk about playing against youth teams that play long, because we've already talked about that in another one of our videos about, why you should learn to play out of the back, but we'll take a look at that as well. And we'll go through all those pieces and parts, and hopefully you'll get the big picture, which is what's important here, is getting the big picture of the process of how you set up your teams to do this. In these examples that I'm going to show you, we're going to look at basically, if I set up my team to play against a mirror image of my team, what would it look like? You may play different formations, you may come up against different formations, but the principles are all the same. So let's take a look at some of these graphics now. So here we have basic mirror image setup of a setup of a team that's playing in that 3-4-1, 3-2-3, whatever it might be. Go back and watch my video on formations and you'll understand that the numbers aren't as important as the principles of play you apply to that. But we have that against a team that's set up similarly here. So what happens when this ball starts to play out? Well, as we saw in our playing out of the video, one of the big advantages a team has when they're playing out from the back, and they do it well, is they have the spare player, usually the keeper. So here, if I'm pressing with one player, they're automatically outnumbered 4v1 in a 4v1 rondo, and we know what that looks like. If I send 2 players, it's not 4v2, it tends to be 5v2 or even 6v2, and if we add on players, it just compounds because they're always going to have those extra players at the back while the ball is back there. But once the ball moves forward, as we'll see, those players in the back can be cut off and isolated, and it can flip the script and make it easier for your team to have those numbers up. You can see here, even when the ball has been played a second time, that the red team is still outnumbered in the big picture. What does this look like? 7v4 in this sort of setup. So again, the ball has been moved now twice, but still with that one pressing player, they have in play both center backs and the keeper. So there's 3 out of that 7v4 that we were talking about. So what do you do? Well, one of the strategies you do is to set traps with pressing triggers. And traps basically mean is You let the play go to someplace, and then you have a plan to react to once the ball gets there to now make it difficult. So in a way, you're saying, hey, I'm going to let you do this. But as soon as that happens, you react. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So you can see here, we've let the ball go all the way out to the winger. We've pressed with one player. They just kind of forced the play in. But now, while that player is bypassed down there, that striker way down at the bottom, that red player, they now can influence the play from the backside. So now if we take a look at this, you can see here we're basically 4v4 or even 4v3 against the team in blue. Why? Because now that player on the outside is isolated. The players on the far left of the screen are totally out of the picture. They're not making that switch backwards diagonally, probably. Maybe at the end of 9v9 they'll be able to pull it off, but it's a really difficult skill because they got pressure coming at them to begin with. Playing backwards is more difficult now because now that striker has still continued his run and now is coming in and cutting off those options to play the easy ball backwards. Play could be played there, but there's more danger. If that wide 7 decides they're going to take their player on and get past them, well, that player has cover because the center back is slid over. So maybe that 7 knocks the ball past your player into open space. Well, now your center back's just going to step up and collect that ball and bring it back in. So you can see the trigger was when the ball made it to the wide player, what the rest of the team does. The back line, the center backs, they all slide over. We still got 2 players on that striker, so if he was able to get that ball into the middle, it's a 2v1. The wide center back has slid over to support their wide player who's covering the player with the ball. And on the far side of the field, we've left that wide winger, and everybody has switched switch players over so that now if that ball was to come back the other way, we already have cover on those places. And again, that striker has come in from behind after moving that play around, curving their run back up. Now where they are, they're now in a position to keep that ball from making an easy play backwards. So the trigger was when the ball made it to the far wide player, we went from our zonal sort of cover the field to now cover the players, going almost man for man across that side of the field, making it real difficult. At this point now, we've outnumbered them 4-3 and maybe even higher numbers at that because we have play going on. Now, in our playing out of the back video, we talked about using the middle of the field. It's a really important key aspect of playing out of the back and playing in 9v9 and 11v11 where there's more room there. So you can see here, ball splits the 2 pressing players. That 6 now has basically every option at their disposal. Left, right, backwards, forwards, center, taking their space, all those sort of things. So what do we do here when perhaps we've sent 2 players and they bypass those 2 players? Well, we're going to use the same principles that we look back in 7v7 in terms of real common defensive strategies and techniques for your players. So we're going to take our players, our 6 that's in the middle of the field facing that player, they're going to curve that run to one side. Why? Because we want to take one half of the field out of play. Meanwhile, one of the 2 pressing players, they're starting to come up and put pressure on the player from the backside from one side, making it difficult for them to play, again, off to the left side of the screen here. Our other pressing player is not going to go straight at the player with the ball, but they're going to drop in behind them. So again, it's difficult for that player to play that safe pass behind them where they were 4v2, 5v2 against the pressing players. We're trying to cut those extra players out of the scene. So what we have left here, so what we're giving them is 2 options to the right of the screen that are really enticing and easy, and maybe a more difficult ball straight forward to the striker, and maybe a difficult ball back to that left side there of that center back. But I'll say that if that ball goes backwards and you look at the positions of the red team in the prior slide, we've got players in position to quickly cover the players that they may have an option to. And remember, that ball is coming into them. They're going to have pressure coming at them, as well as the players that are closest to them are now much further under pressure with cover. It makes it a very difficult ball. If they do manage to get that ball out to the right side, where it's the easiest way to play, now that's our trigger to now move our positions all to the right side of the screen. So now that we have done that, we now have trapped them onto that side of the field. You can see the 6, the 2 8s, the 2 pressing players are coming up, cutting the backside off, the easy pass backwards. One of our 8s here is sliding over to the 7. Our center back has come over. we've abandoned this far left 11 because that's almost an impossible play for them to play across the field at this point because the ball is traveling to the right side of the screen. The player would have to be able to hook that back ball back the other way. So again, here we've let them make the next pass. We've given them an option, and then as soon as we give them that option, we can cut the field in half and really condense their options and style to press. And now we're 1v1, maybe even outnumbered with the ball. So we've gone from being outnumbered in the back, 4v1, 5v2 in the back, to now we have at least equal numbers, if not numbers up. And that's the whole idea of laying traps and pressing, is to give them an option that seems easy, and then once the ball is there, spring the trap, make that shift, cut the field in half, make their play predictable so it's easy to predict what they're going to do next, and then 80-90% of the time, that's what's going to happen, and you can get there. Again, moments of brilliance, player beats a player 1v1, and now he breaks that press. We still got players around the ball, but that's part of the beauty of our game, is that creativity. But it is really keeping the focus on how many options can I limit while giving them pressure as we come across the side of the field. Now, in the playing out of the back video and the other video I have, the why you should play because you'll get found out, what do you do with those teams that play long ball? Well, again, teams that play long ball, once you're set up in your sort of zonal marking, and we'll have some video clips playing here, once you're set up in that zone while we're waiting for things to happen, once you realize what's happening, it's pretty easy to predict. Again, the players become predictable because the other team only does the same thing over and over again. When they play those long balls, you can't head the ball, so you can't flick it on like you might see in a full-size match. Usually, the touch is not the best, and you're able to apply pressure not just with one player, but sometimes 2 or 3 players around that player as that ball is moving and after their first touch, putting them under tremendous pressure. If their first touch is not perfect and that ball even bounces 6 feet away from them, odds are you're going to vacuum that ball right up with the players that are around the ball and move on. You can see in some of these video clips, like this team, their strategy is they will put 2 players on the wing, basically one forward and one backwards, and then somebody in front of them, with the idea of, hey, if we launched up there and the ball bounces through, we'll get one of those 3 players on it. But again, being able to deal with that ball, whether it's on a bumpy surface, whether it's on a bouncy turf field, which is not much better when it comes to aerial balls, and the first touch of newer players, it's a recipe for disaster. It's going to work once in a while, but any team worth their salt, and I bet you most of your teams out there, when you play teams that play against long ball, you love it when they have a goal kick because it's easy to just step on that ball and get it back and go forward again. Well, coaches, I hope you found this video useful. Playing defense in general in soccer, especially as the field gets bigger, is all about making play predictable, and that means limiting the options the other team has. Pressing is a great way to start that process with your players, to teach them to watch for the signs about what's happening and then react to it. So if you're playing a team that's playing long ball all the time, then it's easy enough to now have your players set up to react to what they're doing and force the other team into something they're uncomfortable with. As one of my other videos in the playing out video, you saw perhaps a team try to say, this isn't working, and one of the center backs played the ball across to their other center back, and predictably, their coach lost his mind about yelling at them to not play across the front of the goal because they had never practiced it. And so they did that one time only because they got yelled at, and then went back to just trying to kick the ball long, and again, predictable, easy to anticipate, and we just kept taking the ball off of them and playing back into their half. So learning those skills doesn't necessarily need to have any sort of fancy drill work. I play a lot of attack v defend games and how I work these in a half field. And you can take that same game and flip it on its head. And now instead of working on playing out of the back where that team with the ball has more players and you have less players pressing, you can flip that around, have the team that is playing out from the back have fewer players, have more players on your pressing side in your shape, and have them play. Give them success. Teach them to see those cues and read those cues. If you're doing small-sided games, you can do the same thing, whether it's 4v4 or make it unbalanced, maybe it's a 5v3, all those things. The point being is you're teaching your players to read and react to cues that happen in the game and say, hey, when the ball goes to that wide player, can the rest of you get in positions to now force them there so they can't get the play on the other side? And you can do that playing 3v3, 4v4, any of those combinations. You don't need any fancy drills. You just change the focus of your practice. I don't do a lot of drills. my kids basically play in some sort of square/rectangle with different constraints. And I'm going to have a video on all the different ways to do that. But one of the things that you might want to go look at is my 13 welcome games. It's basically that concept. It's 13 games. They're all some sort of rectangle from 1v1 to 6v6, basically, however many players you have. And I just changed the parameter of the field to work on different things. That video was one of my favorites. It's not one of the most viewed, and I don't understand why. So if you're looking for a leg up, maybe go back and check that one out. Nothing more to say. Really appreciate all your time, your effort, all the subs, all the kind words online. Until the next time, thanks so much, coaches. We'll see you on the fields. Bye-bye.